be cloud. All right, yeah. Then let's get started again. Hi everyone to the next round of the auto-remediation working group. Last time we agreed on working on a template for an auto-remediation scenario, and the scenario should be that we remediate a Java app that is running into a memory exhaustion. And we therefore created a document, and already some progress has been made on this document, and I would propose that we go over this document and see what we have and how we then can proceed. This should be the first part of the meeting, and then I would actually break down the scenario into more concrete items and artifacts, so to say, and then we should come up with a way how to work on these artifacts, like for example the app, or then we also should think about the orchestration of the scenario, as well as the different components that are involved, like data gathering, the change process, recover, and validation. But that's part of later. Let's first focus on what we have in our document right now. Let me just quickly close that one for a moment. All right. Okay. As we said, we want to work on a template, and I just added here a very, very short abstract what this working document is about. It's for defining a proof of concept where we can drive our template of how remediating problems should work. And I have now to ask a question. Kevin, was it you who started working on this document?
Yes, it was.
Cool, thanks. Maybe I didn't change the structure. I did not add, change or removed something. It's here how it was. I just added a couple of things and a couple of comments. Can I ask you to go over this document now and to explain us what you added first?
Sure. Yep. All right. So using this as an example came about because we at our organization at Truist were going through this exact scenario as our first try at auto remediation. So I just thought it would be good to bring this group into the fold working on that similar problem. So in our working group, we kind of went through the process as a group and kind of came up with some of these steps. So let's start with under the assumptions. Obviously, it's going to run in a non-container environment because if it was in a container, we could shortcut a lot of this stuff. The bullet point number 2, sample application that runs out of memory. So one of the people on our team created a sample application. It basically just it's a little Spring Boot app that has 2 buttons on it. You press one button and it increments a counter, and you press the second button and it just calls a loop that runs it out of memory immediately. And so Dynatrace, we have Dynatrace on the server where that was running. It did open the problem, and then we kicked off auto remediation, through some Ansible by way of GitLab, and we can talk about that later. But so we do have a sample app and a way to have Dynatrace detect it.
Awesome, great. Because I was adding this bullet point in the sense of we need to think about an app that we take as sample, but when you have already one, that's really great.
Yep. So I can talk to the author of that. It's so simple. There's no private data or anything to it, so we should be able to share that. But I'll just get his okay, and then I can share that with the group.
Great.
So then we moved on to, okay, when this happens in the real world, in an enterprise type environment, what's the process that people go through to resolve it manually? So the first step is the data gathering. So a lot of times these are supported by another company, say WebSphere, and you have IBM. And anytime you have a chronic issue, they're going to say, well, did you capture all the logs? Did you run this script? Did you take any heap dumps for us to analyze? So there's that process that the vendor usually will require, as well as the support people. So we've got the logs, heap dumps, config files. We could continue adding to that. I see you did have a comment on the config files.
Yep. What do you exactly mean with config file? Is this the config of the app itself or of the JVM?
Of the JVM process, okay. Yeah. So, possibly you could go and look at your, if it's tightly controlled, you could look at your source control and say, well, this was the last thing pushed to it, but did it get changed? Or, so I think it's always good to get a running config before you restart something, just to validate that it was running with the configuration that you thought it was running with. So the step number 2, the change process. So in our environment, you really can't touch anything without documenting it in a change. And in our case, that is through ServiceNow. There's, often debates on things as simple as restarts, as whether that could just be an incident record. Or does it have to be a full-fledged change record? But regardless, if we wanted to kind of keep this more templatized in general, let's say it's more than a restart. Let's say we're doing something, complex. So somehow we need to be able to tie into where to record this change and have it match up with the CIs that we're changing. So in this case, we're restarting that JVM. What's the service that we're affecting, and be able to document that. Along with that, then there's the approvals. Again, company by company, you might have different processes, but this, you might have to look up the support groups to see, does someone have to approve this? If so, who are they? How are you going to notify them? Is there a maintenance window right now? Could you do it without an approval if it's in a maintenance window? So that kind of opens up a few different ideas there.
All right, got it.
So then step 3, we basically now have the okay to do a remediation. So we need to stop the JVM, do any cleanup. Oftentimes, if it's running out of memory, the JVM might dump on its own and fill up some file systems that may prevent you from starting it back up because the file systems are full. So there could be some cleanup work that you should check for. And then we would start the JVM back up. And then I just threw in the idea of, maybe we would potentially make changes, especially if it's a chronic issue. Doesn't help to just continually keep restarting the JVM that just keeps running out of memory. Maybe we need to increase the heap size or change the garbage collection or tweak it in some other way.
Before doing a restart. And do you have already, or how is that one implemented, the recovery phase? Is that one an Ansible Tower script, or how is it done right now?
Sure. So in our scenario that we demoed for our CTO, we have Dynatrace open the problem. We were going to use Ansible Tower, but Ansible Tower, it can be pricey per endpoint. So for our demo, we could have used Ansible Tower directly, but we wanted to kind of come up with a better solution for what we would use in the end. So it was decided we're actually going to go to GitLab. So through the GitLab process, we're able to kick off a pipeline that spins up an Ansible node, and then goes and runs the Ansible playbooks that we created, and then spins itself down. So it was a way to kind of get around Ansible Tower licensing, and yet, you know, give us the breadth that we would need if we would roll this out amongst many hosts. So the Ansible playbooks that we have, so we're going to pass the Dynatrace problem to Ansible, and then he's going to come back in to Dynatrace via the API, look up the problem ID, find the impacted service. So then he can query and get the host that it lives on, and then he can go find the host. We looked at the command line for the Java process to be able to see which Java process it was running on the host, so that he knew which one to restart. And then we had a kill, because this is just a standalone JVM, so there is no shutdown or startup scripts really. It's just a Java jar command. So we just killed it, and then started it back up with the Java jar.
All right, cool. Great. I think I had no time to write it down, but I have to maybe take a couple of notes from here. Really great that you have already this playbook in place that also does the job of remediating your problem. Awesome.
Yeah, I should be able to share that too, if you guys want to see those.
I think we can, or we should discuss this later on, to which artifacts we need or we should work on to get this scenario running. Perfect. And then the last part of the scenario is the validation itself. Is this also automated right now, or is it just an idea?
Yes, this was automated too in the Ansible. So the Ansible playbook, after he starts, it will validate that the JVM is running. We did not do step B because it's such a simple app. We didn't actually generate any traffic against it. So that one's not done. We did not put in C either, checking for any defunct processes. But that, you know, that should be simple enough as well. And then it does scan for, it hits the Dynatrace API and looks to see that it goes into the closed status. So it does do that. So I see you have the last one highlighted. Should be validation. Yeah, either or. But yeah, I think, oh, so we did add a few things to this, and I didn't come back and update this, but we do have another step of escalation. So that kind of plays into this of you have to check to make sure it did what it was supposed to do, and if not, then move on to an escalation step. Yeah.
Okay. No, this one is not part of the escalation. No problem. Originator.
Correct.
No.
Yeah, that would be what would cause you to escalate if whatever originated it does not accept that the problem is fixed. Again, I tried to keep it general and not say Dynatrace problem was closed, because it could
Okay,
be,
yeah,
anything.
fair enough. Good. So, all right, very cool that there are already parts that we can potentially reuse when we want to get this one up and running. And you also worked on artifacts that are required. I mean, here I added a couple of notes I can then
Mhm.
explain when we go through them. Kevin, can you start with the first ones as you yeah, also defined that?
Yeah. So under the data gathering, we need some location information. So first, where does the JVM live on which host, so that we can jump into that host and be able to run our remediation. The JVM log files for archiving off, where the config file is located so that we can grab those. And then the diagnostic archive location. So where are we going to save these logs and configs, which we want to retain before we do the recycle and heap dump. Next, JVM process identifiers. So we need that for to detect the process that we're going to kill or shut down. We also need the process identifier to see who is it running as, so that when we start it back up, we start it back up as the proper user or service account.
Okay. Okay. This one is for run as information, meaning which user was responsible for starting that one?
Correct.
Or,
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, we don't want to accidentally start something as root and then some other thing not have access because the process is running as root, or have a security issue of running as root when it should not, or because your Ansible playbooks might jump in as a different user than what that JVM process needs to run as.
Okay, got it. All right. The next one, captured JVM heat dump. There I did a research on that one, and I found different ways how we can gather information about the Java heat dump. Yeah, here I referenced the blog post or yeah, an article, but mainly that these two options are quite convenient. You can use the native Java option heat dump on out of memory error, and that one generates the log files for us. And then there's also the tool called Jvm, and that one also allows us to generate the heat dump and to get more information about the problem. And that one is very similar, just another way of gathering more information. And what I found interesting is a blog post from Netflix. They also described a same problem they had or they were facing. And what they did is that they used Linux to create the core dump, because they killed a JVM by sending a SIG port instead of a SIG kill. And this was then required to take a look into the core dump and not the heat dump, because you would not get the heat dump when you send a SIG port. Yeah, it was just a problem that they faced, and they fixed it, or they took then the way of going with the Linux mechanism of getting more information about the memory usage. And interestingly, they also have here a little script that then uploads this archive into a S3 bucket, and which is then used for getting or for investigating the problem and identifying actually then the root cause. Maybe just some food for thoughts as we continue, as we are working on that one, on that issue. All right. Then Kevin, the change process, what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this was the change documentation location. So as I mentioned earlier, in our case, it's ServiceNow. So where exactly do you have to document that? Is it a change? Is it an incident? If it's a change, you know, how are you correlating it to the proper CI? The change approval needed and acquired. So in that case, you know, who's the support owner for that service? And if, you know, they need to give approval, how are you detecting that? You know, we're going to tie into maybe a chat ops type thing where you notify them, hey, remediation sitting here, do you approve, not approve? And then yes, no, and then it moves on. Is it a ServiceNow approval that they would have to hit? You know, various options there.
Mm-hmm.
We also talked about maintenance windows. Hey, maybe it's maybe we're looking up for that service if it's in a maintenance window and it doesn't require any approval during a maintenance window. And then the problem originator details. What did I mean by that one? For the change process. Oh, that maybe that was where I was thinking of getting the details of the problem to figure out which service is affected, so that we could tie that to the proper configuration item in your CMDB.
Entry program. Okay. Mm-hmm. Right.
And then the recover remediation. So in our case, it was very simple. We were just doing a kill, but in more complex scenarios, there should be, hopefully, a JVM shutdown script that will shut it down more gracefully.
Mm-hmm.
And then is there any cleanup scripts that could be called that already have some predefined information in those to do the cleanup that you would like? You know, pointing it towards log files or anything else that you're looking to clean up before restarting. And then we have to know where the startup script is to be able to start that up.
What I also figured out is that actually, just let me open that one for a second, that actually Java already provides the feature that you can define a startup script like that one. When you have an out of memory error, you just give it the path to a script, and that one then kicks in when out of memory is detected. I think it's supported with Java 8 or so, and would already help, but this would then be already automated by Java itself and not by an remediation process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that really takes a lot of control out of your hands.
True, yeah. And you would never know when something gets restarted or who did that.
Yeah, that's nice to know, though. I didn't know that they had that feature. So thanks for pointing that out.
Of course, no problem. All right, and then finally, yeah, the validation step. This is what I added, that we can or we could use on service level objectives that we finally check whether they are fulfilled or not. This already gives us an indicator whether we could fix the problem or still have it open. And Kevin, what do you mean with acceptance?
Oh, I think that was checking that the originator agreed that the problem was resolved. So in the case of Dynatrace, validating your problem closure, or if you want if you had it tied into ServiceNow, validating an incident was resolved, or
Got it. All right. Very cool. What we already have. And this is what I added then to the document. This has the title Proof of Concept, where I mean that we have now a very detailed explanation of how a remediation process could look like for us yeah, for fixing a JVM problem. And I think that's already very good. We know the artifacts that we should take a look at and which we should consider. And now I would kind of bring that one into a POC, into a running prototype, so to say. And I would propose from a Keptn point of view to use Keptn for the orchestration of this remediation process, where we have the different tasks of this sequence or scenario. And then we need to provide the tooling that helps to fulfill these tasks. And as Kevin already pointed out, a couple of things are already in place, but I would now open a discussion or would invite everyone to collaborate on how we could build up this proof of concept. Is it clear what I mean? I mean, or I mean, or let's be more concrete. We have the different parts in our process, like data gathering, change process, recover, validation, and finally also the escalation. And to some point, we need to automate these steps by an external tooling or by a custom implementation. I think we have to provide.
yeah. So I'm trying to think of the different services in Keptn that may help us do that. So I know in our scenario, as I mentioned, we pretty much did it all with Ansible. We pretty much orchestrated all of that. So to break it into the Keptn pieces, I don't know. I mean, are we thinking just the generic service offered by Keptn? I mean, I know a lot of these, there's not a whole lot of services, I don't think, that.
No, that's true. I mean, we do have an Ansible service, a ServiceNow service, and also the generic executor for doing any kind of job. But yeah. I think we don't need to take services that are already available as.
If I can just add my thoughts here, I think especially for the data gathering. So what I've seen in this document, that it's so the data gathering part here was very Java specific, but the important part here is for me, once we want to move it from a specific, let's say Java specific use case to a more generic use case, it's important, okay, how do we get this data? And if it's Java process, so in my opinion, it kind of means you have to SSH into this box and you have to find the Java process and you will find the dump, or basically you have to go to this instance and kind of retrieve the data. And it has to be very specific where you will find it. Maybe it's the name of the process is important, the path, the file path is important, where it is. there won't, I assume there won't be a service that is basically listening in this or sitting in the container or in the process and then pushing if there is a crash that it's pushing the data out. So we need exactly where to look for. And although this can be done for this specific use case, I think my problem or my thought is more, how can we make this kind of a generic way that it works for, let's say, most of the Java processes and in most organizations, because like SSHing into a box is probably not the way that will be accepted for a lot of organizations. Maybe there are some restrictions. So I was just thinking more about, only the data gathering part is already quite tricky in my opinion. How do we define where do we get this data? If it's a kind of a pull or push approach, how to get this data? And if we have to pull this data, if we have to go there and find the data, how can we do it? I think that's not that's not an easy part.
Yeah, that's totally true. For this scenario, it would be, as you said, going to the server and then working there locally on the machine.
Exactly. And maybe this is true for a lot of different process crashes. If you need data, you have to go there. Maybe you can find the data also in the monitoring. Maybe you can have, maybe with Dynatrace, you can take a log there, a look there. Maybe you have something like, I don't know, Prometheus or Jaeger or anywhere where you can take a look at traces, logs, whatever. But it's already a huge variety of different options, how to really find this data. And I think we have to kind of find a way that is a little bit generic, because if we assume we can just go there and get it like first class directly from where it happened, I think that will be really difficult. So some way of basically fetching this data via, we have to assume that this data, let's say we have to assume this data is also available at Dynatrace, or we have to assume this data is available somewhere on the accessible data store or log store or whatever. But yeah, I think, Kevin, you are the expert here and you can share the details, but this was just my thought that it already sounds very like a very big problem, very big challenge, how to actually get this data.
Well, I mean, I agree with parts of that, but then I also say that this entire process is that we're going to go into this same server and stop a process and start a process, you know, which also has security things around it. So in knowing that we're going in and doing something destructive like that, I guess I feel like grabbing diagnostics while we're doing that is not as big of an issue. I like your idea of getting that information from somewhere else, and in most cases that's probably true. You know, when we're talking about config files or log files, I'm sure we could do that. The one thing that we probably can't really get around as much might be special diagnostics from, you know, that a vendor requires. You know, IBM, I don't know if you guys are familiar with their must gather script. So you can Google it. It'll take you to their documentation, but they have a must gather script that you got to run. And it goes and does all kinds of things. Grabs OS information and process information. I mean, it's a big script. And when you open a support case with them, they're going to say, but did you run the must gather? So, you know, obviously, being a Dynatrace customer for a long time, the mantra is in my head of, let's catch it on the first time, right? Let's not have to wait for another event to be able to react upon it. So, it'd be nice if we could run those diagnostic scripts the first time we see it, instead of restarting it and then going to the vendor and them saying, well, got to wait for another event. And then when it happens, run this script. So,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think.
No, please go ahead. Yeah, I just wanted to add that we often think of, let's say, doing the JVM restart, that some other party is responsible for doing the restarts. Johannes already mentioned that we have this, let's say, Ansible Tower integration. So it's basically, it's not Keptn that is doing the restart and Keptn going into this machine, but Keptn is triggering the runbooks that you already have. It can be Ansible Tower, but it can also be your bash scripts that you already have. And maybe these bash scripts are started from, let's say, a Bastion host, or they are not they are not living inside the machine that has the issue, but maybe they are part of their automation is already to kind of connecting to the machine that has a problem and then doing something there. And I was more thinking about maybe we can use Keptn in this way, that we are orchestrating the scripts or actions or remediations that are already available. But also that would mean for the data gathering part, we will also kind of relying on some other tool that will give us the data and will provide us the data. Otherwise, we are another mass gather script, and that might kind of put us. That will put Keptn also into the bucket of a log analysis or data gathering tool, which I think we are not, but we can utilize these tools and make sure that we bring everything together that that can be leveraged for the process of automated remediation.
Yep, I agree with that. Yeah, the Keptn would orchestrate, but you would have a different tool that actually did the work for you. Yeah.
Correct. Thanks, because this is exactly what I wanted to express by this part. We have the orchestration layer and then the tooling underneath that is then taking care of executing the jobs. And for me, it would I tried to get an understanding of which tools could we reuse, or how could we, for example, do the data gathering part or the change process or the recovery part. Should we already take those examples that are already available? As you said, Kevin, for a change process, you had ServiceNow, or you have ServiceNow in place. Recovery was done by an Ansible script. And the data gathering archiving part, is that one already available, or?
No, I believe the only thing that we did with that, I think there was a little cleanup, just looking for dumps and getting rid of those, but that was Ansible as well. And I would move forward with Ansible on that probably too.
Okay. And for validation, we have here, a check on the SLOs. And above, let's validate whether the JVM is running, JVM is accepting traffic, and no defunct process running. I think this is something where Dynatrace can help out.
It can, but yeah, you would still need something to check Dynatrace data with. So I think that again would be Ansible. I know that's what we used to check that the problem was closed, check that the JVM was up and running.
All right. Would it now make sense to you to continue working in a way that we now try to provide an Ansible script, integrate with ServiceNow, and make up, and we build up this entire scenario by tooling underneath?
So, and one of the other things we did, not really change process per se, but you know, we went in and updated the ServiceNow incident. So we tied the Dynatrace to the developer instance of ServiceNow, and had the Dynatrace app in that ServiceNow instance, and so it automatically opened the incident and resolved the incident. And as Ansible was going through, it would update that incident saying, yep, I found the JVM, I killed the JVM, I restarted the JVM, and then Dynatrace came in and resolved it, and then Ansible says, yep, I validated that I see it resolved. So we did a lot of Ansible stuff in there as well. So we didn't do escalation, but we could have, and we would have done Ansible. So long-winded, as you look at this, we basically orchestrated everything with Ansible.
Mm-hmm.
So my question would be, why do we use Keptn?
Mm-hmm.
Why not use Ansible for everything? Because that's essentially what we did.
Yeah, you used Ansible and Ansible Playbook to orchestrate everything. Yeah.
Yeah. So the main playbook would have separate tasks under it, kind of
mm-hmm.
working through the flow that we had up above. And, you know, anytime if it would have an issue, then we could kick it out of that flow and hit the escalation flow, or but move through that workflow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I figure I gotta at least ask the question. You know, just in my head, I'm thinking, well, is it simpler just to use Ansible?
It's a very good question, but when you have a playbook like an Ansible playbook, you always connect to the tools that you know today. But in the future, maybe you want to integrate with another service, maybe you want to exchange ServiceNow with another tooling. Then you have to go back to your playbook, and you have to adapt everything that is ServiceNow related. With the concept of Keptn, you would easily just exchange one of these components, because the process you don't have to touch. And you just plug in another component, and that one is then working and then taking care of executing this particular task. You get more flexibility, and also you, for future changes, you're ready to take them, as you can easily plug in the tools as you need them. This is the main benefit you would get with Keptn.
And I do understand that concept, but just in this specific case, we're saying that everything's Ansible. So if we had Keptn doing this, if we replaced Ansible with something else, we're still in that same boat, I think, of having to go back and change everything. I can easily be talked out of this. I just wanted to bring it up for, you know, food for thought, and and you know, have somebody convince me that putting Keptn in the middle. So because we went through a process of trying to come up with, okay, we need somebody to orchestrate it, and then we need somebody to do the work. And, you know, we looked at possibly using ServiceNow, GitLab, Ansible, Keptn was on the list. And as we started going through each scenario, it was, you know, we don't want to throw a tool in just to orchestrate if it's just adding another failure point either. So when we started working through the process, it kind of came down to Ansible being the orchestrator. Seemed to be the simplest option.
Okay, I see.
I know it's a buzzkill.
No.
I just want to, you know, I just want to bring it up, you know, to get discussion around it, and maybe even, you know, have you guys expand and bring that up with other people to get more people thinking about it. But you know, why put Keptn in the middle if we could go potentially from a Dynatrace or Prometheus or something right to Ansible and have it orchestrated if each of your steps is already Ansible.
Okay. Yep. As I said,
and maybe there's a better way to do it too. Maybe we'll say, well, data gathering, actually it's better to use this tool, and change better to use this, and recover better to use this. So this is just our first scenario, but you know, just food for thought.
Am I back? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, my computer did not let me switch any windows, so I could hear you, but I could not unmute myself because I couldn't see Zoom. But I just wanted to add that I always think of Ansible a little bit of like a general purpose automation language. Like you can use Java for building whatever application you want to build, but there are, for some parts, they're just more, there are programming languages that fit the purpose better, but you can do a lot of it with Java as well. And I think Ansible is also one of those languages or automation languages, let's say, or platforms where you can do a lot of things, but especially when it comes to validating again the quality of the services. Then in Keptn we already have the quality gates baked in. It's based on service level objectives and service level indicators. So we're kind of using a couple of those best practices from the SRE community there, and you can just use it out of the box. You don't have to write it yourself. And then also the tool integrations. So there is, for example, the Slack or Teams or whatever integration. So whenever you want to switch those tools, it's basically just, as Johannes mentioned, just one tool integration that you can do. You don't have to change the process. You don't have to change all the automation scripts. It's just a new approach and a new take on this. But for sure, it can be done with Ansible as well. I would even argue it can be done with Bash as well, but we just moved on with more with other concepts that maybe fit the purpose better. But yeah, if you already have everything in Ansible, then I think it's not good to just throw it away, but just to find a way how can you bring those things together. Yeah, Keptn can be one of those orchestrators. And it's also when we are building Keptn, it's not only about the remediation part, but it's also a lot about the deployment and delivery part. So, and you can also do this with Ansible, but it's a lot of custom scripting if you want to do this. So this is just my thoughts on this.
Yeah, and I really like the quality gate stuff. You know, I demoed that for some other people at our organization, and they were all very impressed and, you know, anxious to go down that route too. So I think obviously Keptn will be in our organization definitely for that use case. And so I guess if you already have it, it makes sense for auto remediation to say maybe use it. I guess my only thought was, okay, say I don't have Keptn, would I install Keptn to do the auto remediation? And just working through this flow, I would say probably not, since I could just go Dynatrace to Ansible and do it all there. There's not, I guess, that strong value add that Keptn brings on the auto remediation side of things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
so
this
I
is
would
the
want,
part where. Oh,
yeah.
sorry.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is the part where we are now building something with Keptn that has a lot of this is why we are reaching out and building this working group, because we want to figure out what is needed to support organizations in this process, and because everyone is building everything for his or her organization. This was also one of the problems of Keptn, that it's kind of everyone is building kind of an automation, not maybe a platform, but everyone is building CI/CD automation, because everything that is out there does not really work for them. So everyone is, let's say, starting with Jenkins, but building everything a little bit different. But after all, everyone is building CI/CD automation. But what we are trying with Keptn is to bring this together, not by just bringing another tool to the table, but more, okay, you have now built your custom, let's say, the way how you want to deploy your applications. But still you need a way to validate the application. So you can either then use your own thing, or you can go for Keptn quality gates. But the deployment itself, you can kind of connect it to the process that Keptn will then orchestrate. So you can do your own testing scripts. You are not tied to any of those, to one specific tool or to one specific way to do it. You can basically, you can interact with the Keptn control plane, or the Keptn control plane will interact with your tool. And we're really trying to build a tool or a platform where you can connect everything that you already have, but all this glue code and what happens when, and I need to do the rollback, but when is it triggered, and how to do the evaluation actually. This is what we wanted to kind of take away all this, the burden of integrating all tools to each other. This is, I think, where one of the strengths of Keptn lies.
Yeah, and I think, so you got my brain going here now. So I think that is the big difference. We are showing a operational auto remediation. So something is, a monolith is sitting out there and has been running, we're monitoring it, and something goes bad and we want to correct it. The other scenario that you brought up that makes more sense is the CI/CD pipeline. So we've now done a deployment and something went bad and we need to auto remediate that. And that makes a ton of sense in Keptn, because as you say, you've got all the deployment information in there, it's process flow driven, and we're going to insert some auto remediation pieces in that, and it's all going to be all documented in one place. So I think, yeah, maybe we started with a scenario that's not as Keptn per se friendly, but auto remediation on a CI/CD pipeline makes a lot more sense and has a lot more vision in my head.
but still, the scenario we have right now here in front of us is also a use case that can be covered using
Sure.
Keptn. I mean, we skip the entire deployment part, and we start working when a problem occurs, and this can occur in a deployment scenario as well as in a normal operation part.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I mean, I can propose to show the next time this workflow we have right here, just a skeleton of how Keptn would execute these 5 steps. And we then, in the follow-up meeting, we then discuss how to bring in the different components. Like, for example, Ansible to do the first step, then ServiceNow to do the second one, and so on. Would this make sense to make progress here?
Yeah, I think so.
Because what I can do is I just create this process, and as a receiver or as a tool, I don't use a tooling. I just use a Slack notification or anything else to show that this is now triggered and executed. And then when the execution is done, I just go on and I can demo that so that we then can think about exchanging these components by the tooling we have or we should have available then. Okay, and Kevin, can I ask you a favor? As you mentioned, you have the sample app that allows you to simulate the JVM problem.
Yes.
Can you take care of getting this this example?
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can do that.
But without tooling. Okay, the sample app, the process orchestration is done by me, and we started discussing the tooling of others. We discussed the tooling, but I think let's just continue the next time to get more concrete on how we will do the certain things like data gathering, the recovery process, and finally also the validation. Is that okay for you?
Yep.
Perfect. Then next time, a short demo on the remediation process. We take a look at the sample app and then figure out how we connect the template with tools that are available. Great.
Sounds good.
Perfect. Then
Good meeting.
thanks, you too. Have a nice day and see you next time.
All right, sounds good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Take care.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.